Hey, welcome to today's podcast. One of the things we're going to be talking about today is marriage and just improving marriages. One of the things that we have a passion for and a heart at Cottonwood Creek. And joining me today are Steve and Ruth, and they lead out in our marriage ministry. They lead out in putting together our marriage conferences, our mentorships, or our ongoing marriage series. And so, Steve and Ruth, man, great to have you guys.
Thanks. Appreciate you inviting us to be part of this.
Well, as we think about marriage, before we even dive into the ministry, kind of tell us personally why are y'all's hearts so drawn to helping people's marriages and improving marriages overall? What's your heartbeat for it?
Yeah, I guess our drive for this started almost 30 years ago, where when we had only been married for a little over a year, we almost got divorced. So like there were papers served, and like it was for real. We almost were divorced. So coming from that, after the way that we recovered from that was we committed our lives to Jesus. So we'd both grown up in the church, but we had never committed our lives to Jesus in that we were promising to do his will, not our will, after that point, and seek him and let him lead us versus just do what we wanted to do. And so when I called off the divorce, I thought I was going to be miserable for the rest of my life because our relationship just wasn't very good at that point. But I was committed to the Lord, to doing what he wanted me to do, and I didn't feel like divorce was right. But when you do that, when you put the Lord first, it changes everything. And we grew in our faith, and our relationship grew. And I mean, it's better now than I ever thought it could be, probably from when we first met. So that's what probably really, really started our desire to help others with marriages.
Well, I love that. Thanks for being that open. And Steve, share a little bit about your heart as you think back to where you were and where you are now.
As in all things, we each have our own kind of perspective on how things go. But I think my perspective there is that my drive and desire is just to be useful to our Lord. Right? That's your drive and desire in life. And very often times what happens is he gives you ministries and the things where you had struggles, because then you can go and help others. And so this happens to be one area where I think we've hit just about all the roadblocks you can hit and all the struggles you can hit. So having gone through them, it allows us to be able to both understand where other people are coming from and connect with them and be able to say, hey, I see you. You're not alone in this. And let me tell you, our experience, and maybe that helps people, to kind of learn from that, so they don't step in the same holes.
Or
And that's an incredible story. Go ahead.
Or if they step in the same holes as us, we can hopefully help give them a hand to come out of those holes.
Something that I just to restate what you already said is you both grew up in the church. A lot of times people think, well, I'm a Christian, I'm in the church. We do love God to a certain extent. Why is my marriage better? And and I think a lot of people have an unrealistic expectation that we're not going to have those road bumps. We're not going to run into those roadblocks as well. And I love a couple of things that you said there. And I think you have a statistic to back this up, Ruth. Is you when you called the divorce off? Okay, y'all were close, right? You thought you were going to be miserable the rest of your life. Okay. And that's what people think. But you told me an interesting statistic the other day about those who maybe are on the precipice or somewhere moving towards, or at least thinking towards divorce, that if I get divorced, then I'm going to be happy. But the statistics actually say something very different. Share that with us.
Yes. So the researchers looked at the couples 5 years later, and the ones who went through that hard time and didn't get divorced, they are happy in their marriage. They're happier in their marriage than they were. and their lives, and in general, the majority of them. And then the people who actually got divorced, 5 years later, when they go back and re-interview them, they are still miserable. They're still, they might be remarried, they might be divorced and trying to figure out what to do with the children and that sort of thing, but they're not any happier, and sometimes they're more unhappy than they were 5 years ago. So
Right. That's incredible encouragement that a lot of times people think, well, if I just get a divorce and I can move on, then I'm going to be happier. But the research, the data just doesn't support that. The data supports, hey, put a little work in your marriage, dive in, dig in, stick with it. Now, you still got to do the right things, right? But at the same point, you're probably going to be happier staying in the marriage that you're in 5 years than if you leave that marriage. And so talk about some of the things that you guys help. Part of our marriage ministry at Cottonwood Creek. Someone who's listening to this right now, maybe they're thinking, "Man, I'm thinking about getting divorced." And y'all are a great testimony of that. But talk about some things that they can start doing, and that the ministry here at the church offers for people to make sure when we look 5 years from now that they're in that happy phase and not still miserable.
I can. So I guess there are some ways that you can just dip your toe in, and so once or twice a year we'll have a bigger event where anybody can join in, and that would be like the marriage weekends or the Valentine's Day event. And so that the marriage weekend will have a speaker and who speaks on marriage and some kind of helpful principles, hopefully, with that. And so you can just come, be part of the crowd, listen, and you will gain more from it if you put into practice the things that you learned there. But there's no set accountability per se. You could just come and hear a good speaker. And then after that, we have marriage studies every Wednesday night at midweek, so during the school year. And again, you can just come, you can listen. It's a discussion-based experience, so it helps if you contribute to the discussion, but you can come and just listen to other people. So that would be the next level, I guess. And then after that, we have small groups. So Reengage is one of those groups, which meets on Monday nights. And you get assigned to a small group, which is closed. So you get to know those people. You build community with them. You're there to encourage one another, and you go through a curriculum together. So we just had our celebration, like our graduation from this semester's group, and every single one of them grew. Even the ones that admittedly didn't put as much work into it, they still saw growth in their marriage. They saw growth in other relationships, because the same principles that work for marriage work for any relationship. They improve any relationship. So and the other remarkable thing that we noticed was that the men come in very silent to these small groups. And when they leave, they are the leaders of their marriage and probably their families. And they're talking in front of groups. They're so confident. It's just a complete transformation.
Yeah. And just to add to that, when you talk about the big group meetings like that, those are the ones that you can go to and tell everybody, my marriage is good. I'm just going to this, just for my wife, or, I just want to go. And when you go to that, you'll learn good principles that you can apply to any relationship. It's safe. You can learn a little bit. When you're ready to start taking one step further and say, maybe I can learn something here, that's when you're going to go to those Wednesday nights and be able to really get more in depth into you. And ultimately, for the folks who are ready to be a little more vulnerable, ready to recognize that, I can grow here myself, and maybe it's not all my spouse. Maybe I have a little bit of, something to work on too. Then you're more comfortable in in a really small setting where you can get into those things confidentially, and being able to share open and honestly. A lot of folks are afraid to open that up, right?
Sure.
Because if you're in a marriage and you're like, well, we're not divorcing yet, why do I even want to bring up any of this stuff, right? Because you're afraid it could get a lot worse. But that also locks you into where you're at. And if you're just surviving, Christ did not call us to just survive in marriage. He calls us to have life abundantly, and your marriage should be life abundantly. Your marriage should reflect the character and glory of God. And if it's not,
Mhm.
if you're just surviving in marriage and you think that's okay as your status quo, well, there's more that can happen. And, within the marriage ministry, we can help you whenever you're ready to go and start thinking about these things, whether it's in the big group, safety, anonymity, or whether you're ready to get into smaller groups or even into the real small confidential spaces.
The mentoring. So we have couple to couple mentoring also.
Yeah. But
Couples men, and one of the interesting things, just in general, I think you shared that in general of all the relationship marriages that are out there, about 50% are on that struggle line. Is that correct? One out of every two, whether you're inside the church, outside the church, uh, and each one of these, something we've talked about in the past, is there's also data that shows if you'll put 8 to 10 hours into your marriage a year,
Mhm.
your marriage is going to get better. Now, the more you want to dig in, and that's why we offer a lot of things, like you said, the banquets or the marriage weekend, where you just come and listen. You're going to learn some great principles, but you still need to go apply them. Then we have those Wednesday night Bible studies that you can come in 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. You just come in, sit down on Wednesday nights. Child care is provided, and then you're going to grow a little deeper. And then, or you can get in a small group and really begin to do the work. And so tell us, you also mentioned re-engage, right? Re-engage on Monday nights. Tell us the kind of person or the couple that really re-engage is good for.
mm,
Yeah. So most people have the misconception that it's only for people who are struggling in their marriages, and that's just not true. So Steve and I went through it as participants the first semester. We had a couple who had taught it at another church come in and lead us, and our relationship grew tremendously just through going through the curriculum. So, I mean, we went back and brought up some of those things that we thought we'd never want to talk about from early in our marriage and work through those. And it just, there were a few tears, but I mean, it did strengthen our relationship even after, and that was in 2023, maybe. So not that long ago. So it's for any range of marriage.
but I think the criteria if you want to succeed and re-engage,
Mm.
you have to be willing to be honest. You have to drop the mask
So,
of
yeah.
everything's perfect with us, and I don't really think there's any room for improvement. If you're already thinking I'm a 10 out of 10 in this marriage, then you're not going to allow, the curriculum to lead you into, and it really, in reality, it leads you into the scripture. And once you get into the scripture like that, that gets into dividing between thoughts and intent, and, where you find out what your motivation is there. And that's where you get refined.
One of the things that y'all found, and which is true, a test we've been given at the church for pre-marriage counseling is Prepare and Enrich, but we also offer that to families who are married now, right? And they ask them 10 or 12 basic areas, expectations, financial, what do you do, children, all of that kind of thing. And just the act of taking that test has a tendency to improve the marriage because it gets you thinking about how do I feel? How do they feel? So, talk a little bit about the test and the positive impact that you've seen on people as well.
Yeah, the prepare and enrich test, it takes about, I don't know, 30 minutes or 40 minutes to do it. So just by itself, making that commitment to, yeah, I'm really going to take this test, that says something. People, once you make that first step of I'm going to do something about this marriage, then it's easier to steal a car that's moving. It's you want to get it going a little bit first, and so you start going. The process of doing that test, it asks you questions that maybe you didn't think about before. And then afterwards, you want to go back and say, how did you answer that question? Because I answered it this way. And you start having these conversations. And really, so much of time, we busy ourselves with life. We busy ourselves with our work, with things we got to do, to-do lists. The busyness of life comes in, and that can choke out our ability to listen to God. It can choke out our ability to connect with our spouse, to be that light in the world we need to be. And so taking this assessment slows you down for 30 or 40 minutes, makes you
Yeah.
think about something. And then once you've slowed down just a little to think about it, you go, maybe I need to talk further about this. Maybe we need to start discussing, priorities, or how we're doing our finances, or, all of those things. So it gives you
I
that.
love it. And, one of the things that I've seen, and I see you guys, and what I appreciate about y'all, Steve and Ruth, is you're willing to go back and dig up, past experience. Here's how close we were. Papers had been served. We were that close. A lot of times, and I share this. I've seen this over my years, as 30 years as a pastor. There are some people right now that are really going through the hard seasons of marriage. Okay, there are some people that are still newlyweds, and they don't think there's ever going to be a hard season of marriage. And then you've got people on the other end that the hard season of marriage, because they stuck with it. Remember the data earlier. If you stick with it, you have a tendency to be happier. It's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that others who are struggling can look at them in church or in life or in the neighborhood and think, if we only had a marriage like that. And a lot of times you're like, well, if you knew the whole story, because from a pastor's perspective, um, I get the opportunity and the blessing to preach every week to people who I can look at this couple sitting together and say, I can remember 5 to 6 years ago, they didn't think this thing was going to make it.
Yeah.
And now I'm watching them worship, and they're smiling, they're holding hands, walking into church, and so I get the beauty of seeing that. But what I love about the marriage ministry of the church, it comes down to the couple, right? And sometimes a couple can look around and think everybody else is happier than me. And that's part of what the marriage ministry does. It says, listen, you have no idea
That's true.
where they've been, or sometimes what they're going through right now. So share a little bit. One of the things that y'all also touched on, we've touched on many times, the idea of prayer in marriage, just learning to pray with your spouse. What are some of the statistics on that?
Yes, so it's something like 1% of, so if a couple prays together, like 3 to 5 times a week, it wasn't even daily, that less than 1% of those couples get divorced. So,
That's crazy. Just learning to pray a little bit together, even anywhere, everywhere, lunch, dinner together, or just as you're going to bed, or just rolling through life together. It just, magnifies the opportunity that God wants to do something special in our life, right? And that's an amazing thought. So you look at God working. Tell everybody briefly what it means. We have marriage mentorship. That's getting in the deep weeds of marriage ministry. Give us a brief overview of what mentorship looks like.
well, they usually start by taking that assessment, that the prepare, enrich assessment that we were talking about. They don't necessarily. It can start with just a phone call, but we like to meet one-on-one if possible. So I'll meet with them, or we'll meet with the couple first, and then we'll try to match them up with a mentor couple that fits them well. If it's a struggling, a more marriage in crisis, Steve and I will usually help that couple first, at least, to try to get them out of crisis. And then maybe they can be assigned a mentor couple who can meet with them, go over that assessment. That assessment has a personality test that it kind of explains a little bit about family of origins, as well as just assessing where their marriage is at that current time. And then that mentor couple can, tell them a little bit about their own experience and what they've learned from it, but they're also there. They have a connection at the church then, that if they run into a hard time in the future, or they just need somebody to talk to, they have somebody that they can reach out to confidentially anytime after that. So that's one thing that's really good about
Yeah,
it.
I love that you mentioned the word confidentiality, and that's one of the things we're big on at Cottonwood Creek, whether it's in Stephen Ministry or marriage mentorship. Hey, a lot of people are like, man, I don't want to share what I'm going through because then everybody's going to know. Well, the truth is, you're not going to become a marriage mentor if you can't keep a secret. If you can't hold the truth about someone else's marriage tightly, because the last thing some man wants to do is tell something, and then all of a sudden other people know, or the lady wants to share something and everybody else knows. And so part of that confidentiality is so important.
Yeah, one of the comments that we get frequently from folks is, "I'm so alone,"
Mhm.
right? And we've had numerous couples who have said, as soon as we started to have problems in our couple, right, other Christians distanced from them. It's almost like they were afraid they would catch it. It would spread to their other marriages or something like that. And we are not made to be isolated. When you get isolated like that, it just magnifies the problems, make them seem more insurmountable. Nobody else has experienced what I've gone through, and there's no hope. And once you get to that part that there's no hope, then you just start crashing. So getting
Yeah.
into the mentorship program allows you to have somebody who is not going to abandon you on this, let you know that, hey, you're not alone. We've all gone through this. We've all had struggles, and it is by God's grace that we can get through this and, help you. Just sharing what you're going through with somebody
That's
is
right.
really helpful.
I did just thank you so much for your ministry. Because we ultimately know first institution God created was marriage, right? And so it's powerful, it's important, it's for the best interest of our children, for our grandchildren, for communities, for cities, for churches, and everything. And so what you do, I consider a high priority. Let me just tell you, if someone is watching this podcast or listen to this podcast, and they want to reach out to the marriage ministry, what's the best way for them to get connected with y'all in a private way, in a secretive way, but they can get help? So how would they reach out to you? And I want to encourage you, if someone's watching this or listening to this and you're going through some stuff, or you're just ready to improve your marriage, I want to encourage you to reach out to Steve and Ruth. The church isn't going to know, the world isn't going to know, they're going to know. We're going to get you the help you need. So how should they communicate with y'all?
Well, we have a great text code for that. So you text marriage to 77978, and I believe that gives my email address. So you can also fill out a connect form on the website on the Cottonwood Creek church.org. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
then either way, I'll get that and I can reach out to them. But I'd love an email, with a little short summary of what's going on and what kind of help they would need. But either way, I'll reach out to them no matter whether they fill out the form online or they text marriage to 77978.
So two ways. If you're listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, and you want to grow in your marriage, you want to, maybe you're in a crisis mode, maybe you're just struggling a little bit, and you want to do some preventative work, or you just want to better your marriage, text marriage to 77978, or you can go to cottonwoodcreek.org, go to our marriage ministry and fill out a form. And your information is going to go straight to Ruth. It's not going to go to 50 people. It's going to go straight to Ruth. So, anything else y'all would like to say before we close?
Yeah, there's one other thing that's good to point out to people, and one is, if you are a Christian believer, right? You're a Christian believer, then the question is, did Jesus raise from the dead? And if the answer is yes, okay, to that question, can God raise the dead? The answer is yes. Can He raise a dead marriage? Yes.
And we've seen it.
So you have to have faith to say, you know what? If God is in the miracle business still, He hasn't abandoned us, and there's hope. And then once you have that hope, you just take one step forward to say, we don't have to be scared to start bringing this up, sharing it, getting help. There are lots of people that have gone through this.
That's right. I love that. Well, listen, Steve and Ruth, thank you all so much for sharing your heart, sharing your story, but also leading out in this important ministry at Cottonwood Creek, the marriage ministry. God bless you. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you.